Hello friends and welcome back. It is that time of year. Things are wrapping up. We're about to exit 2019, enter 2020, a brand new decade, and Christmas is upon us. And if that doesn't fill you with dread, then you must be the most organized person in the world, because I am not that person. I've fallen so far behind in my Christmas shopping, I believe that this is the holiday that single-handedly supports all of retail, because there are just too many people to get gifts for. But rest assured, we are in the kitchen today not to cook up something to fill our bellies with, but to cook up a solution to my problem and potentially yours as well. We are making, if you hadn't already guessed by the jars in front of me, candles, also by the title of the video. So, I've got myself a small jar. I actually have more than just one. This is the display stock, as it were. We have 12 small jars. Hey, 12 days of Christmas. There's a pun in there somewhere. Well, not really a pun, more of just a... I don't know. I went to uni to study science. I also have 12 large jars. Now, I did make a bit of a whoopsie when I ordered these. As you can tell, these ones are white, these ones are clear. Why is that? Because they're frosted. However, Christmas saves the day again. This is still somewhat relevant because Frosty the Snowman. There you go, I still get to link it in with Christmas somehow. On top of these jars, I also got these little boxes. I wanted to get the little tart molds, but they were completely out of stock, so I got these ones. Apparently, the goal is you're meant to pour the wax into these little chambers, and then you can fold this up, close it, and it's even got something to hang it on a shelf. This would be if you were going into business, and also if you wanted to use up stupid amounts of plastic just to produce 2 tart molds, which someone's going to take away and then throw in the bin anyway. I've got a better idea. I've got like 10 of these, so I can just... whoa. I can just lay these all down on the table, possibly even cut off this top section so it actually sits properly, unless the weight of the wax actually holds it down. I don't know, but these will be put to far better use if I just reuse them. Downside is I get very basic and bland round molds. The tart molds, they had a nice shape to them. They had all these... I'll throw a photo up so you can see what I mean. These ones are just circles. You're going to get little pucks of wax. But that's not very Christmassy, is it? Sure, I've got the frosted jar, but I think I need something else to spice things up. I have a bag, which isn't very impressive on its own, but the reason why I have this bag, and in fact I have multiple bags, I have bags inside of bags inside of bags. Reason why is, you can see some colours in there. These are dye chips. I'm going to be staining this wax. I'm going to be dyeing this wax, potentially Christmas colours, I hope. I have got a rather rich orange, or what is this one? Cranberry. Actually, that's meant to be very red, so we'll see how that one turns out, but it's looking orange in the packet. I have autumn orange, there we go, that is my orange one. I have aqua, and I have lime green. Red and green, everyone, that's Christmas, am I right? So with all of these materials, we are going to make Christmas-themed candles, but rest assured you can use these at any other time of the year. If it's a birthday, if it's Valentine's Day, if it's a birthday, I said that already. If it's literally any reason you have to give someone a gift, if you're running out of ideas and you're panicking, set an afternoon aside and you can churn out 30, 40 candles, and then you have gifts lined up for everyone in your life. Or you can just burn them around your house. These are fantastic to have going. There is never a bad opportunity to give someone a candle. Everyone loves scented candles, and you can save yourself literally an arm and a leg. Okay, maybe not literally, but figuratively, and you can literally save a ton of... okay, maybe not a literal ton of money, but you can save a lot of money. All you need is a jar. You need some jugs. This one is a plastic jug. It's got a 1 litre volume capacity, I think, or maybe it's 500 ml. No, this is a 1 litre jug, and I'll use this for all of my intricate pouring. Probably for these tart molds and these small jars. If you're doing bigger jars, get yourself a big melting pot. This is probably ready to accept 2 to 3 litres at a time, so you can fill lots of jars on the go. You'll also need a stirring spoon, a set of scales, and behind me, just out of shot, I've got set up on my stove a pot filled with wax beads. Now, when you get your wax, I'm using, I think it's a soy wax blend or something or other. It's not a paraffin wax, it's a soy wax, and I know there's a lot of commotion going on about which wax is better to use. So apparently palm wax is the worst one to use environmentally speaking, because I think something palm trees deforestation. I don't really know how they make it. Soy wax is so-so, and then I think what they're coming out with now is a soy beeswax blend, which is trying to combine the best of both worlds, because, you know, bees produce so much wax, and then the soy wax is semi-environmentally friendly. I don't know. There's just so much to go into. I try to do the best I can, so I've opted to use soy wax today. And also, it gets a fairly decent fragrance throw. It doesn't get as good as paraffin wax. You can load far more fragrance into a paraffin wax candle, but soy wax I usually put in about 10%, which is decent. It's fairly high, so it throws a good fragrance. It lasts a long time. I think a jar about this big, this will give you, I want to say, 60-hour burn time. I mean, I want to. I'm not sure if I should. Let's say 40-hour burn time for this, and something this big, you'd be looking at a 15-hour burn time. So this would be your little gifts to people, and they're going to have to come back for a candle every 2 weeks if they burn it regularly. This one, you can give it to them, they'll last them a month or so, regular burning. But that's enough of the boring stuff. Let's start melting wax. So the first step in your wax-making endeavour, fill up your pot with a decent portion of wax. So the way I do this is I put more wax than I need into my main pot, because this I'm just going to be melting away, getting it to the right temperature, and then I will pour the liquid wax into whichever vessel I will be pouring my jars from. Reason why I do that is you can try and measure out this wax by weight. Do all of this stuff by weight. So these are in pellets. The place that I get all my wax from, they used to do flakes, and I guess they just decided the pellets, they melt better, they melt easier, it's easier to maneuver around, and I guess maybe it takes up less space overall. I'm not sure about why, but they've changed to pellets, and I much prefer them. But your wax could come in flakes, it could come in solid bricks and bars. However it comes, it doesn't really change what you do, you just have to melt it down. Now, going back to why do I melt it in a big batch before measuring out by weight how much wax I need? Well, when it's solid, it takes up a little bit more space, and when it melts down, it's obviously in a liquid, and so you can fit more melted wax into your container than you could dry wax, which means that when it comes around to pouring your candle jars, if you've measured out 1 kilo of wax into your vessel and you found that it's topped out, you can't fit any more in, if you'd done it as a liquid, you could probably fit 1.5 to 2 kilos in there, and then you can pour double the amount of jars in one go. So, and also it just makes things a lot easier if you've got a big batch of wax held at temperature. It means that once you've emptied out your pouring jug, and if you want to immediately fill more jars, you've still got another 3 kilos of wax ready to go at the right temperature, and you can just keep moving on. Plus, when you start running low in your main vessel, in your main pot, you can add more unmelted wax, and then whilst you're pouring your candles, that can slowly be melting away, and then when you come back after pouring, more wax ready to go. It's just it depends on how many candles you're making. If you're doing a small batch, maybe put 0.5 kilo to 1 kilo in your pouring jug, melt this on its own, you're good to go. Another thing I might point out, some people in the comments are probably going to be going absolutely mental right now saying, why aren't you double boiling your wax? I used to. The safest way to melt wax is to get 2 different pots, one larger than the other. And what you'll do is in the large pot, you'll put some water and you'll get that water boiling. And then in the smaller pot, you will sit that inside the large pot and put your wax in that one. What that means is your wax can never get above 100 degrees Celsius, because that is the maximum temperature that your boiling water is going to get to, because then it's going to be boiling away and pulling away that energy. It's a safe way of melting wax, because wax does have a flash point, and if you reach that flash point, don't be inside, don't be anywhere near your pot when it happens, because it's just not going to be a good time. I haven't looked into the exact consequences of that happening, but I just know it is not good, and I do not want to be part of a liquid wax explosion. That is no one's good day. However, I do not recommend melting the wax the way I am about to, because technically speaking it is dangerous. But if you watch your wax the entire time and you're constantly stirring it, it shouldn't get to those temperatures. But that is the key. You have to watch your wax, you have to be stirring it all the time, and then once it is all liquefied, I'm going to have this on full blast, this gas stove, whilst I'm getting the solid wax to melt down to a liquid, but once it's at that liquid state, and once it's getting close to the temperature I want it to be, I'm going to turn it right down because I want to slowly get to that temperature and make sure I don't exceed that. Both for safety reasons, also your wax is going to set better and perform better if you don't burn it in the melting process. Wax does have a burning point, and I think this one, the wax I'm using is very forgiving. I could probably go up to maybe even 100, 110 degrees with it, and it shouldn't be too bad. But the preferred temperature I'm going to get to is about 80 to 83 degrees Celsius. Don't really know what that is in Fahrenheit, so do your own conversions. But 80 to 83 degrees Celsius is what I'm aiming for. That's when I'm going to add my fragrance oil. That's going to bring the temperature down to maybe 70, 75 degrees, and then I'm going to be pouring at that temperature. So, melting time. Now, if you can, I would highly recommend getting one of these infrared thermometers. They are the most useful thing you will find in candle making, just to get that temperature exactly right. You can use a regular thermometer, either I want to say a mercury thermometer. They don't use mercury anymore, but one of those style thermometers, otherwise a digital thermometer would be fine to use as well. This one just makes things a lot easier. You just point it at your wax, and you can see it is currently 60, 66, 63, 65. With this small batch of wax, it is going to be jumping around a lot, because a lot of heat is going to be coming up from the bottom and circulating around, and this picks up those heat currents, which is why it's jumping wildly. But basically you just want to get it roughly to about 80 degrees, and then you can just edge it up to your 83. Or you can call it there. Between 80 and 83, just as good. Alright, so we've got just about our target temperature. 81 is going to be close enough for me. So now I'm going to pour this into my jug, and I'm also going to add the dye blocks at this point. Not into here, mind you, because I do want to do two tones, and keep in mind, I've lost my spoon. Bugger. Well, as I was saying, since this is my... What is this? This is a pot. Yes, but it is my... Oh, stock wax. I don't want to colour this one. This is what I'm going to be pouring out of, so once I've got it into my pouring jug, then I can colour it. So let's get that going, shall we? But first, shall we recover that spoon? Yes. Yes, we should. But how? So for the amount of wax that I have in my batches today, I think I'm going to go for 4 of the large jars, 4 of the small jars, and 4 of these tarts, which will be 2 of these packets, because there's 2 in each. Simple math. I'm capable of at least that much. So I've worked out I'm going to need 940 grams of wax, 104 grams of fragrance, which I may just round to 105, because why not? I do like round numbers or multiples of 5 or 10. So I've got my scales here, I'm going to pop those down, but before I turn them on, I'm going to get my melting jug, or sorry, my pouring jug, pop it onto the scales, and now this should be zeroed. I then go and get my big old pot, and I'm going to pour 940 grams of wax directly into here. Now do be careful at this point. This is where it comes into play, how much wax did you put into your pot to begin with, because if you loaded that thing up with 5 or 10 kilos of wax, that is how heavy it's going to be as you go to pour. So I'd recommend keeping a low-ish quantity of wax in your main pot, just so that you can actually pour it effectively. If you find yourself unable to pour like this, get someone to help you who can, or just don't use this method at all, because it may not be for you and you might just have to melt your wax in the small pouring jug. But if you can, fantastic. It's the most efficient way to do this, especially if you want to do a long run of jars. So there's my wax. I'm now going to get my little fragrance jar, zero the scales again. Ooh! Now to this point, I haven't even thought about fragrances. Let me clue you guys in. Now for this little venture, I went and got these fragrance oils. What I have in this hand, blood orange, and in this hand, raspberry. And I'm thinking I'm going to try and mix them together, probably in a ratio of something like 70-30, with 30% being the black raspberry, because it's the smaller little bottle that I've got. So if I want to do that, 105 grams, and so, oh well, I can literally do 70 grams and 40 grams, and then I've got 4, so I'll do 73 and 42 grams. That'll be close enough. So, when it comes to fragrance oils, you can get them pre-made and they will be set to a certain fragrance. So you can get blood orange, you can get mandarin, you can get lime, coconut and lime you can get strawberry, peach, licorice, chocolate. You can get anything you can possibly imagine. The website that I get my candle supplies from, they have honestly hundreds and hundreds of fragrances. But there's nothing to say you can't mix and match as well, because I don't believe that I was able to find blood orange and raspberry on their website, but if I can buy the two fragrances separately, I can combine them to create my own personal fragrance notes. So, do that yourself if you so choose, and if you start mixing your own fragrances, then that candle is entirely yours. It increases the handmade value of it, so when you give it to your friends, family, and loved ones, you can tell them that I made this fragrance especially for you. So without further ado, let's do that. So, what did I need? 73 grams of the blood orange. So I need 42 grams of this, what is this again? Raspberry. I've got my wax, I've got my fragrance oil, I haven't mixed them together yet. I'm going to do that just before I pour all of my candles. First I'm going to grab my dye color chips, and I'm going to use the cranberry, and do I want to mix the orange and cranberry to make a rich red? I think I'll just use the cranberry chips, and so since I've got almost a kilo of wax here, they recommend using 1 chip per 500 grams, so I'll use 2 of them. Now I've avoided touching these as best I can, so I've got them on the end of the stirring rod here, so just dump those 2 in, and then give them a good stir around. So these should melt into your wax. I may actually need to re-raise the temperature again, but the wax is darkening, going red. This may actually turn out. I'm going to be very grateful if it does, because I've never used wax coloring chips before. So I'm going to bring this back up to temperature, and then we can get into the pouring process. So my wax is back up to temperature. I have laid out in front of me my jars, large jars, small jars, and the melt pots. So I'm going to add all the fragrance in this jar into this pot. We've measured it out before, we know how much is there, so you honestly just need to stir your wax and continue stirring through the pour process and just evenly pour in your fragrance oil. And so at this point, you should start getting a lot of fragrance throw happening, so you can smell and appreciate your work right now. So I'm going to start with the large ones. Get your scales. So I do everything by weight. If you knew where on your jar the wax was meant to come up to, I've made a terrible mistake. So it's at this point I've made a mistake, and those keen-eyed viewers out there probably would have noticed that these jars do not yet have wicks in them. Fortunately, I caught my mistake before I poured any wax in here. That would have been an absolute disaster. So now would be a fantastic time to talk to you about putting wicks into your jars. What you could do, if you were like me 3-4 years ago when I first started making candles, you could actually pour the wax into the jar and then get your wick and try to place it in the center and get it to sit exactly where you want it. You could do that. Or you could learn from my mistakes in the past, and I can tell you right now that that is the worst way to do it, and you will hate yourself for it. The wicks then start melting, because these are wax coated. So candle wicks are typically wax coated because that helps them to stand up straight when you insert them. But the problem is, if you put a wax coated wick into a hot jar of wax, the wax then melts and then the wick just sags anyway. So there's no point doing it that way. The best thing you can do for yourself is get an entire strip of these things. They're basically little, I want to say like a little spongy, rubbery material, and it's just double-sided tape, basically cut into circles. The beauty of them is you get your wick, you stick it to the bottom of the wick, you pull off the other tab with a little bit of difficulty, and then you can just stick it dead center. And this glue, it's not heat activated, so when you pour the hot wax in, it doesn't release from the bottom of the jar. I mean, it can, so once it's in there, try not to pull too hard on the wick, which you will need to do to some extent afterward. So after you've now poured the wax into here, you'll then want to put some tension on that wick. To do so, I've got these paddle pop sticks, which I've just put holes into. And what you can then do is you can push the wick through that hole. Oh, with a lot of difficulty because I made them quite tight. Ow. You can then pull the wick through that hole, rest this paddle pop stick on the top of the jar, and then pull the wick tight. Now, you have a wick which stands straight up. It's not sagging, it's not bending inside the jar. And so when you pour your wax into this candle jar, you've got a wick running up the dead center of it. So that is how you'll put your wicks into your candle jars. Get yourself some, well, they call these wick stickums. Shit you not, wick stickums. So get yourself a bag of wick stickums, stick your wicks into your candle jars, and then pour your wax away. Best way to do it, I tried the other way myself personally the very first time, and I hated every second of it. So, I'm just gonna stick wicks into all of these jars, and then we can get back to the pouring process without any further delays, I hope. So that is the first batch of candles. Red one's done. Now I need to move on to the green. So I'm going to be changing fragrance here as well. I've got myself some coconut and lime fragrance oil from a prior batch of candles, and I think if I'm going to make the blood orange and raspberry, the red candles, I have to make the green ones coconut and lime. That's the only fragrance oil I have around that kind of gives off that green vibe to make it all come together nicely. So I'm going to get on and I'm going to repeat the entire process, but just using the green dye color chips this time. And so whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to leave you guys with some very aesthetic footage of candles drying. Don't worry, I'm going to speed it up. If I didn't, I think it would be like watching paint dry. And once everything's set, all you need to do is remove all of the wicks. So I've already gone ahead and done that because I don't think anyone needs any guidance on how to get a pair of scissors and just snip off a wick. What you want to do though is leave a very small, or short wick rather. You don't want your wicks too long though, that's the thing. Leave them about 1/2 centimetre to 1 centimetre, that should be plenty. Because a long wick, it's going to have a larger flame, and the larger flame is just going to burn more wax faster. And if you did get the right wicks for your jars, you don't need to make that flame any bigger than it's going to be, so just trim the wicks short and keep them that way. And there you have it. A little bit of wax, a little bit of heat, some fragrance oils, some jars, some wax melt molds, some wicks, wick stickums. Do not forget those. They make your life at least 10 times easier for the duration of your candle making. And what else? Oh, the thermometer. So, the infrared thermometer makes your life a lot easier, but you can get away with just a digital or old style mercury, well, fake mercury thermometer. And beyond that, there's really nothing else you need, just the pots to melt it all in, and do not use your parents' favourite pot, because it's going to get covered in wax and it is incredibly difficult to get off. The only real way that you can get rid of wax is by, I suppose, boiling water in the pot, and the wax should rise to the top, and then you can empty out the pot, and then you'd have to use hot soapy water and do all that sort of stuff. If you can get your hand on a cheap second-hand pot, and the bigger the better, if you can get an old 20-litre pot or something of the sort, you can just use that for all of your candle making in the future, and then just leave it dirty. You don't really need to get the wax out of it, because if you're only ever melting more and more wax in it, then, well, what's the point of getting rid of the wax? It's just a pain in the ass, and you can save yourself the trouble. And this goes beyond Christmas. You can use candles as a go-to gift at any time of the year for birthdays, Christmases, what else do you give candles away for? Just for the fun of it, if you so chose, or you can even turn this into a business. So candles aren't actually that hard to make. You can save yourself a lot of money. If you love burning candles and you find that you're having to buy one every couple of weeks or months or whatever, save yourself some money and have a good time whilst you're at it. Make your own, because you can honestly, when I say make your own, you can make them your own. If you want a green candle, red candle, blue candle, brown candle, don't know why you would, but maybe you do. Caramel's probably a better descriptive word. But any colour you want, any fragrance you want, it is entirely up to you, and that's how you do it. You melt the wax, add the fragrance, pop it in a jar, and that is a candle. Done, from start to finish. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today. I hope that I have shown you something new and interesting, or I may have even saved Christmas for you if you, like me, were absolutely panicking at your sheer lack of organisation, because me, it's a week and a bit out and I have done none of my shopping. But with the amount of candles that I have made, I've got at least 6 people sorted with just one of these and one of these. So give it a go yourselves, and if you enjoy watching me do random stuff, do subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you enjoyed this video in the slightest. Of course, if you hated it, I will allow you to leave a dislike. Not that you need permission, just go ahead, just click it if you really want to. It just makes me sad. But it's been a lot of fun, and I hope I will see you in the next video. So take care, be good, and see you next time. Bye!